here. So Zealot got a rework too, and that's great. I think I needed it. Also, the Eviscerator got some slight adjustments to help it keep pace. So, I'm enjoying using it. Let's take a look at the talent tree and go through it. We'll go through piece by piece, and I'll try to describe where I am to you as I go along. So if you're just listening, you can kind of understand what we're talking about. I'll try to give you a sense of the shape and position of different items. Obviously, this patch will release for you on the 23rd. It will release for me on the 23rd, and I will be streaming that time. So if you want to come play with me at that time, hopefully this guide will help you be sort of ready to go and with at least a sense of what kind of build you want to run. Let's jump into it. So this tree, much like the Arbites and the Oberon trees, has seen a lot of consolidation and cross-pollination of talents, allowing you to select more freely what you want. I don't know if cross-pollination is the right word, but hey, we'll just roll with it. So at the very top, we have this sort of diamond shape. This allows you to select a bunch of different talents, so you're not stuck running the same toughness talent over and over and over again. You can select an array of things, and then you can still get whatever grenade you want. So we're finally free. Zealots, the build is over. We get to play some interesting stuff. Now, on the top left of the diamond, on the top left of the tree, we have Anointed Blood, up to plus 25% base ranged damage, which is reduced the further you are from the target. Voice of Terra is sort of on the middle section of this diamond row. Replenish 4% toughness on ranged kill. Most people never take this, but I guess you could run like a gun build. It would be kind of funny. Okay, in the center, we have Disdain. Plus 5% damage on your next melee attack for each enemy hit, stacks 5 times. This only affects every other attack, so it's not that good, but it's a little buff, whatever. Backstabber, 25% damage on backstab and flanking hits. So this is a great way to do extra melee damage if you're doing backstabs. Now, all of these are sort of just points to play, so don't worry about them too much. Just pick the side you want. The center row is where most of your toughness generation comes from. So on the left, I mentioned the Voice of Terra already. Going across to the right, we have enemies within, enemies without. Replenish 2.5% toughness per second while within 5 meters range of an enemy. It is increased by 1% per enemy. Monstrosities count as 5 with a max of 7.5%. So this has been changed and made more reliable. What's going on here is that you can get up to 7.5% regen, which is non-trivial, and you do this just by being near a large number of enemies, or you at least get some moderate amount when near a monstrosity. So this is a reliable way for you to sustain over the course of a game. I think it's decent. I've been including it in my builds. It's not radically improving my survivability, but I certainly don't feel squishy when I'm using this. Blood Redemption, plus 100% toughness replenishment on melee kill. I believe the way that works is you just get more from the value of a kill, which I think it's something like 5 toughness, so you're getting like 7 instead. I know it's I forget exactly how that works. Can someone tell me how that works? Post a pin comment. Tell my dumbass how that works. Plus 100%. Wouldn't it be 10? I digress. Let's all laugh at me in the comments on that one, and we'll move on. The second win, replenish 15% toughness on successful dodge. This is, I believe, slightly reduced from what was it 20 or 25%? Anyway, it used to be a lot, now it's 15, and it's on dodge. It's really strong still, so just don't even worry about it, just take this every build. But you can take this every build without feeling bad. Vicious Offering is replenish 10% toughness on heavy attack kill. This is really good for weapons that use heavy attacks and really useless if you're not using heavy attacks all the time. So my chain axe, I love this. If I'm running a great sword, I love this. If I'm running a tack axe, I don't really use this that much, so I don't want this. All right, down on the right-hand side of the diamond, just before we get to the very point, Duelist, 50% finesse damage for 3 seconds on successful dodge. On the left-hand side, Purge the Unclean, 20% increased damage against infested and unyielding enemies. So those nodes are really common choices, and they're both right there, and you can grab them in almost every build unless you run out of points. At the very center, at the bottom of the diamond, at the point, is a 10% status buff to melee damage. You're going to take this no matter what, and it's a good one. All right, so here's some of the more exciting components. It's always been difficult to take the other grenades, pretty much impossible, because the only good toughness generation was Second Wind. Now you can take whatever grenade you want, regardless of what toughness nodes you have. So Stun Storm Grenade is on the left. Throw a grenade that stuns all enemies within its blast radius. There's an augmented version. This is the augmented version of Stun Grenade with a 50% blast radius. So it's basically just a big stun. It's always been good. It's never been bad. It's literally the only problem with it is that it's somewhat unreliable sometimes. I'm not sure what mechanics like determine what is and isn't in the stun radius, but it's a very useful grenade for clutches and stuff like that. Immolation grenades. Throw a grenade that leaves a layer of flaming liquid, burning and snaring enemies and barring their path, most effective against unarmored enemies. So this is a Molotov cocktail for the ground. It is good. There's nothing wrong with it. It throws really fast. It can be really useful for eliminating threats as if you get swamped. So not bad. You get 3 of each of these 2 grenades. There's no regeneration options on the Zealot tree. Okay, next up, everybody's favorite, Blades of Faith. Throw a consecrated knife to deal high damage to a single enemy. It's very effective against most enemies, less effective versus carapace armor. Basically, it does nothing to carapace, by the way. It's not like less effective, it's like useless. It's super fast to throw, practically instant. You can actually, on headshot, it basically one-shots any specialist or unarmored elite. The only thing it's really not good into is gunners and maulers, and I suppose probably plasma gunners since they have carapace hats. If you kill an elite or specialist in melee, you replenish 1 knife. And ammo boxes specifically give you more knives. So if you pick up ammo, you get knives instead of having to pick up grenades. So if you take Blades of Faith and someone else is using grenades, you don't consume that resource. I will say the 2 grenades Zealot has are pretty good, and most classes have a way to generate grenades. So you don't always have to feel bad if you want to have the grenades. It's just the FYI about it, okay? Good for news for everybody. Until Death is just built in now. On your way down, you're going to take Until Death, fatal damage in the center, and just after grenades. It grants you invulnerability for 5 seconds and occurs every 120 seconds. It is unchanged and it's right there. If we go straight down, there's this sort of new little like blue nodes section. It's kind of a weird section, but I kind of like it too. Holy Revenant is right there. When Until Death ends, you regain health based on the damage you dealt during Until Death to a maximum of 25% max health. Melee damage dealt heals 3 times that amount. It's Holy Revenant. It's good. What do you want? Okay, so in this section, we're going to go like row by row so you understand what's going on. So there are 3 sort of like diamond shapes and then 2 incomplete diamonds after that. And then you get into the auras. This is one way that Zealot doesn't quite allow you to take everything freely. You can't just get whatever aura you want quite as easily. You have to commit somewhere. Still, it's pretty easy. So on the top row of these diamonds, you have Sustained Assault, plus 4% melee damage for 5 seconds on hitting an enemy with a melee attack, and that stacks 5 times. This has always been good, and it still is good, and now it's very accessible. Holy Revenant is right after that, and then to the right of that is Thy Wrath Be Swift. Also very good, basically in every build take. So you can grab all 3 of these right at the top of the section before you go anywhere else. Enemy melee attacks cannot stun you. On taking damage, gain 15% movement speed for 2 seconds. Okay, next row. Desperation, up to 20% melee damage based on missing stamina. Or Punishment, melee attacks that hit at least 3 enemies gain 5% impact strength, 5 seconds, stacks 5 times, and at max stacks, gain uninterruptible. If you ever take Thy Wrath Be Swift, you do not need Punishment. The next diamond is technically separated from this diamond, so these 2 abilities can't be taken unless you are willing to go down a whole path, okay? Like they're a little walled off. You're not looking at the screen right now, just so you're aware. These are exclusive from the other 2 abilities I just mentioned. Against the odds, for every 2 enemies within 5 meters, gain plus 2% damage and 10% cleave. Stacks 5 times. So this is wild. It generates you, what is that, 50% cleave for every 2 enemies within 5 meters. So, I mean, 5 meters isn't like a huge radius, but if you're like getting mobbed by a horde, you're getting a lot of advantage out of this. This is probably worth taking in most builds if you can afford to. Shield of Contempt is also and always has been strong, though I'm not sure how good the uptime is, and it's kind of unreliable on who gets it. But still, when you or an ally in Coherency takes damage, they gain 60% damage reduction for 4 seconds, and it triggers every 8 seconds. Here's the thing. This can apply to you 100% of the time if you're running around like a crazy person all by yourself, or if you are clutching. So this could be clutch. All right, another mutually exclusive section, at least unless you're willing to spend a lot to get into each section, right? Unseen Blade. which has an icon of a hammer instead of a blade. Don't ask me why. 50% damage versus enemies not targeting you. This is presumably the kind of thing you need Infiltrate to have advantage of, because you really need some way to like reduce threat for this or be invisible, but you can get 50% damage from that. Out of pocket. Melee backstab kills replenish 5% of your missing ammo from your reserve when swapping to your ranged weapon. So this is like Weapon Specialist thing, where always prepared, where you get ammo into your gun for free after you do some stabbing. Stacks 5 times. So you can get like 25% of your ammo, 25% of your clip back into your gun, your magazine back into your gun for free, which probably is going to be, I mean, that's less than the basic 33% you get for the veteran one. You'll get like 1 bullet typically on like a revolver, right? So I don't know if this is worth a talent point or not. I guess it depends. Okay, across the middle now. These are all interconnected, so they afford you the capacity to cross-spec. Faithful Frenzy is on the left, is 10% melee attack speed. Center, Providence, plus 25% revive speed. In addition, allies you assist / revive get 10% movement speed, 15% toughness damage reduction for 5 seconds. That's nice. Good Balance is right here on the right-hand side, middle section. A successful dodge grants plus 25% damage reduction for 2.5 seconds. That's always been good. I can imagine a world where I go with Irathi Swift into Unseen. Yeah, see, the problem is I don't care about Odd Pocket, I don't care about Unseen Blade. So if I'm going to grab Good Balance after the Irathi Swift, I probably am going to like network down into Providence, maybe, from against the odds. That's my guess. Okay, Grievous Wounds. 50% stagger, plus 50% stagger on melee weak spot hits. This is actually pretty good, by the way. There's some weapons that get some nice breakpoints into Razor headshots that will knock things over or stun them out of their attack combos that won't otherwise. So don't sleep on this. If you can find a build that needs it and can use it, it's actually decent. Okay, Dance of Death going back to the left from the right-hand side. These nodes require you to dip in a little bit because they're part of that diamond. So these are exclusive from one another unless you're willing to spend a lot of points. So Dance of Death, minus 75% spread and 50% recoil for 3 seconds on successful dodge. This is actually pretty good, by the way. I've always liked using this. Thy Master's Retribution, knock back the attacker on taking a melee hit, 8 seconds cooldown. I believe this still, though the reading maybe doesn't make it clear, works on dogs. So every 8 seconds, if you get dogged, you just don't. This is the thing. There's an ability like this on Ogren, there's an ability like this on Zealot, and there's an ability like this on Arbites. Arbites has his own dog to do basically the same thing. And so there are talents on most of the trees that allow you to escape dogs, but they don't allow you to escape Trapper's Nets, so keep that in mind. Okay, Abolish Blasphemers is on the left. It's plus 15% damage versus elites. Pretty good little buff note there. All right, underneath Faithful Frenzy on the left-hand side, to the right, we have Retaliatory Defense. On Block Break, you are no longer stunned, and instead restore 50% stamina, 12 seconds cooldown. So it's not uncommon for me to end up in a Block Break situation. I've run out of stamina, and I get stunned, and that sometimes gets me killed. Well, this completely prevents that. So this is not bad, though I'm not sure I wouldn't just try to play better to avoid this situation. Impassable, gain plus 25% block cost reduction while dodging, for 2 seconds afterwards. Perfect blocking and attack restores 3 dodges, 8 seconds internal cooldown. Okay, so that probably sounds confusing, but let me just explain. If you are dodging enemies while under threat and you're not swinging your weapon to attack, you should generally be holding block so that if someone sneaks up behind you and doesn't give you the whoosh, you don't accidentally take the hit, right? You're blocking. So you might be dodging and blocking at the same time to avoid damage as you kite. This reduces the cost of that block from getting hit from behind, which I believe is still in this game. You do actually see an increased block cost for getting hit from behind and blocking from behind. So this helps mitigate that. And also for 2 seconds afterwards, if you block a hit while dodging, or while on serial dodges, you'll have reduced block cost. So this can help you sustain in a bad situation. A perfect block, which is when you time it with the enemy attack close enough to perfect, which is not hard in Darktide, you actually restore 3 dodges. So you could use this to stay alive in really nasty situations. So this doesn't look like much, but it's basically perfect for kiting or getting out of really difficult situations, and it might be really good. Okay, auras. Benediction, still here, plus 15% damage Toughness damage reduction for you and allies in coherency, still there. Beacon of Purity, still there. Heal 1.5 corruption from the current wound for you and allies in coherency every 1 second, still there, still the same. And we replaced Loner with Zealous. Minus 15% stamina cost for you and allies in coherency. Look, man, I'm going to be honest with you. Unless you're running into corruption problems, Benediction is probably still the best because 15% toughness damage reduction for everybody on the team is actually really good. However, minus 50% stamina cost for you and allies in coherency isn't bad either. So if you've got like 4 Zealots on the team, somebody should take Zealous. Because that will just benefit everybody, okay? Next, you get a conjoined node, just a boost, plus 25%, or plus 25 toughness. Solid, all done. Okay, let's go to the left here. You can take whatever ability you want now. Isn't that great? Fury of the Faithful, to my knowledge, has not changed, except they added an additional node to it, so you can buff it even more. Dash forward, replenishing 50% toughness and gaining 20% attack speed for 10 whole seconds. Your next melee hit gains 25% damage and has 100% rending and is a guaranteed critical hit. This is, and always has been, a huge damage pump. The dash forward effect, if you don't know how it works, can target an enemy and send you like something like 15 meters towards that enemy at high speed while being immune to bullets. And it also has a small local stagger on impact. It hits enemies really within like 1 or 2 meters around you. So it's actually really easy to like ram into people and use this as a safety tool, a damage tool. It's just really strong, and it always has been. If you're running Fury of the Faithful, you're doing a lot more damage than if you're not. Well, to help with that, you can get Redoubled Zeal, and it just gives you 2 charges of Fury of the Faithful. You can get up to 100% toughness. You can stagger these out a little bit so you can get a long duration of a bonus attack speed, which, I mean, you can have 20% attack speed for 20 whole seconds. It's a huge damage boost during the duration of a fight that you might otherwise not have. You can use this like one-shot certain enemies. It's great. And you can do that twice. Unrelenting Fury is new, however. Killing an elite or specialist within 5 seconds of using Fury of the Faithful restores 20% of the ability cooldown, which gives you a maximum of once per use. This means that you can Fury a lot more often. This is pretty strong and is probably worth taking if you can afford the points. I probably will be taking this in all of my builds. Okay, let's go across to Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude. Wield a holy relic that releases pulses of energy every 0.8 seconds while channeling. Allies in coherency have stun immunity and invulnerability. Okay, so each pulse replenishes 45% toughness to allies in coherency. If the ally is at full toughness, they instead gain 15 max toughness up to a total of 75 overshield. This is the yellow toughness. Each pulse also staggers and suppresses enemies within the radius. Range increases with every pulse. It has a 60-second base cooldown. On the left is Holy Cause. Channeling all 5 pulses grants plus 40% toughness damage reduction to you and allies in coherency. This is usually the one you want, and it lasts 10 seconds, just like your over toughness. Ecclesiarch's Call. Channeling 5 pulses grants 30% damage to you and allies in coherency and lasts 10 seconds. Same deal. On the right-hand side, Shroud Field. We've got some changes here as well to the subnodes, I think. So Shroud Field, maybe I'm crazy, but so let's talk through Shroud Field. So Shroud Field, enter stealth for 3 seconds. While in stealth, gain 20% movement speed, 150% backstab damage, 150% finesse damage, so that's headshot damage and weak spot damage, and I think critical hit chance? No, critical damage is what it is. 100% critical chance and 100% melee rending. Attacking makes you leave stealth. Base cooldowns 30 seconds. So in many ways, it's FOTF, but it makes you invisible instead, and you only get 1 use. Hope that helps. On the right hand, we have Mastercrafted Shroud Field. Mastercrafted Shroud Field duration is increased by 5 seconds, and upon leaving stealth, you gain minus 75% threat and 50% backstab damage the whole time for 5 seconds. So you could use this to like, this is like a new thing. You could use this to like get behind enemies and really take advantage of those backstabs for as long as you can. On the other hand, on the right hand side of this, at the bottom of this little diamond is Invigorating Revelation. This replaces Perfectionist. No, this is taking the place and swapping places with Perfectionist, which is no longer mutually exclusive with Mastercrafted Shroud Field. Invigorating Revelation replenishes 50% toughness on use of your invisibility, and you gain 30% damage resistance for 8 seconds upon exiting stealth. Pretty nice. Perfectionist is now available regardless. It restores ability cooldown. Oh, but it's been changed. You now restore ability cooldown on stealth kill. Monstrosities restore 50%, ogres restore 30, and other targets restore 15. So the point is, your loop now allows you to actually get in behind an enemy, actually snipe them, and then gain ability cooldown from that kill, allowing you to continue to use your Shroud Field more often. So there could be a position now for Zealot where stealth is actually quite frequently used instead of being not used at all. That's probably good because the playstyle was basically dead up until recently. Okay. Now we have 3 stat nodes across the top, and then we go down into our basically keystone sections. These have been radically altered, and they're really nice. So the nodes are plus 10% melee damage boost, plus 10% toughness damage reduction, or plus 5% movement speed. Okay, let's go to the left-hand side. This is what the old meta used to be, which is Blazing Piety. Let's talk it through. So on the left-hand side of this sort of diamond beforehand, everything's diamonds, I guess. We have Scourge. You may recognize this. It is melee critical hits apply bleed, causing damage over time. Melee hits on bleeding enemies grant 10% critical chance for 3 seconds, stacks 3 times. Across the middle section, we have an interesting change to the tree. This purple node here is Invocation of Death. It's been adjusted to 100% ability cooldown regeneration for 3 seconds on melee critical hits, but it is mutually exclusive with the other cooldown reduction nodes on Zealot tree, so you can't take them all even though they're near the top. They are just locked off from one another. This allows you to get access to one very easily, but prevents you from taking them all. I think it's an interesting solution to the cooldown reduction problem that we've been seeing with the Zealot class. Notably, it makes Chorus a lot harder to spam because you can only take one CDR node, since the other ones are actually inside. Perfectionist and Unrelenting Fury are inside the abilities themselves. Yes, there's CDR for these 2 abilities, but they're built into the ability. The only ones that are external to the abilities are locked off from one another, so you can only have one. Still does the same thing as it did in the previous patch, I believe, but that's an interesting change, and it's worth mentioning how that works. I think it's just like it's a really interesting way to redo this. So it also looks like it is actually lower, so it has been adjusted. Okay, Enduring Faith, 40% toughness damage reduction on critical hit for 4 seconds. So still really good, by the way. Now, on the left-hand side, we have a new talent called Blinded by Blood. Bleeding enemies increase their damage taken by 15% for 5 seconds. So as you're doing bleed, you get more advantage. Seems nice. All right, middle of that, just before Blazing Piety, though you don't have to take this to get to Blazing Piety, is Prime Target. Plus 10% damage and replenish 15% toughness over 5 seconds after an elite kill. Gives you sustain and gives you more damage for 5 seconds after killing any elite. And then on the right, no respite. Replenish 10% stamina on melee critical hit, 1 second cooldown. So if you're critting a lot, you're going to get lots of stamina, and that could be really used for certain weapons and mobility techniques. These seem like pretty strong buffs, and I think we're going to look through this bottom section, you're going to see there's buffs in this tree. And this is really where like the buffs, to me, live on this tree, though I'm not sure like how much of an impact that makes. We'll get to that at the end of the video. Blazing Piety, 50% critical chance for 8 seconds when in Fury. Fury is triggered when 25 enemies have died within 25 meters. Critical hits also count up towards triggering Fury, so that's just built in. That used to be a node I believe you had to get. Infectious Zeal, allies and coherency have 10% critical hit chance while Blazing Piety is active. So you can see this has been compressed a little bit. There's only 3 subnodes instead of 4. Stalwart, triggering Fury replenishes 50% toughness. In addition, while Fury is active, you have 25% toughness damage reduction and replenish 2% toughness each second. Quite strong. Righteous Warrior, 10% critical hit chance from Blazing Piety. So there you go. You can get more crit chance. It's kind of all easy. It's a little simpler to get your Blazing Piety working right. Okay, let's go down the middle section here. This is Martyrdom. Now, I want to just call this out now. This Martyrdom section is pretty good. I think, though I am not certain, that Martyrdom is very likely to become the popular norm for Zealot players to play as the meta build. This was not something I chose. This is just how things shook out. Someone's going to say Martyrdom is my favorite, and it always has been, but I've always thought it was good, so I didn't think it needed any reworking. If I'm even allowed to say that. I think I am, because this is just my opinion. So my opinion has always been Martyrdom was fine. I like Martyrdom the way it is. Everybody doesn't have to like Martyrdom just for Martyrdom to be good. Martyrdom is good on paper and in practice if you're good enough with it. Well, I think that now it's just going to be the meta. So if you don't like playing Martyrdom playstyle, that you don't have to, but I'm just letting you know, I think this is very likely going to be meta, and I'll tell you why. Martyr's Purpose is now the best cooldown reduction node. It is up to 50% ability cooldown regeneration based on missing health. Max reached at 25% of current health. So if you have a quarter of your health remaining, or if you've lost 75% of your health, you just have 50 plus 50% ability cooldown all the time. 100% of the time. So you want this probably. And if you want this, you probably are going to want to be at low health, and you might as well take Martyrdom. So that's why I think Martyrdom has probably just become the meta. Now we're going to go through a few other things here. So I can definitely be wrong about this. I am not certain at all, but I think it's likely. So on the left, we have Punish and Piety. This is a great node, by the way. You probably want this in all your builds if you can afford it. But what it is if you do a push follow-up attack, so you do a push attack, you get 10% melee attack speed for 5 seconds. That's free 10% melee attack speed on top of what used to be on Zealot. So this is just like this is really strong, and all you have to do is do a push attack, and you do them all the time on Zealot, right? So this is great, and it's really accessible near the top of the top of this bottom section. Okay, on the right-hand side is Bleed for the Emperor. Bleed for the Emperor has always been interesting to me. Damage that would take your health to the next wound is reduced by 40%. If you have a lot of wounds, the opportunity for this to happen is high. However, there's kind of a weird interaction here, where if you have a lot of damage reduction, which Zealot does, you can be on your last wound, and let's say you're on your last wound, and this attack would have put you down, but instead it loses all the due to the DR. It doesn't like the way this can end up working, and I've seen it work in game, and someone's gonna have to do the math. I don't know what the logic is, but I'm just telling you, I've seen this happen in game back when I used to run this all the time. Instead of taking a lethal hit from something, I would just take like 12 damage or like 8 damage. And then I would just be able to do that like 3 or 4 times before I finally hit the last one, right? That doesn't always work, because sometimes you take enough damage that like drives you down a lot. There's 40% doesn't prevent like 100. Like 100 damage is still down to 60 damage is still a lot of damage, right? But like you can take hits that would normally put you under and just not take them instead. So I think this is interesting. I'm not saying you need it all the time. You could probably sacrifice it for something else, but play with it. Okay, speaking of Restoring Faith. On taking damage, you heal 20% of that damage, and it occurs over a second. So this is where you can get sort of that rubber band effect. Well, you take some damage, you don't actually lose the wound, so you don't hit until death, so you don't go down. But then 20% of that just comes back, so you have a little bit of wiggle room for the next hit. Restoring Faith has always been good, and I still think it is good, and I still think it's good in a Martyrdom build, even though it makes getting to that final wound a little bit harder. It's pretty good. Okay, so Faith's Fortitude plus 2 wounds. This is good because you want to have enough wounds for your Martyrdom, right? All right, Unfaltering. Become uninterruptible while charging melee attacks. Remove 100% of heavy melee attack movement speed penalties. There are so many weapons on Zealot that use heavy attacks, and now you don't get slowed while using them. So this is another reason why I'm saying I think Martyrdom is going to start to shake out to be pretty popular, because all these like little quality of life things are tacked on right here, and then let's actually talk about Martyrdom. 10% melee damage for each missing wound, up to a maximum of 5 missing wounds. Not 7, 5. Well, how do you get to 5 missing wounds? Well, you can't miss the last wound because you would be dead. So if you have plus 2 wounds and you're playing in Damnation, you have 4 wounds. That means you can lose 3 wounds, which means you need 2 wound curios. This frees up 1 wound curio while still affording you the maximum number of Martyrdom stacks. It used to be that I would intentionally, while running Martyrdom, sacrifice a wound curio. Now, I don't have to sacrifice anything except for those 2 additional wound curios. So I can have a Toughness curio and still get full Martyrdom stacks, whereas before I would sacrifice at least 1 stack of Martyrdom. Well, what does that additionally afford me? So it's going to afford me 50% damage. It's going to afford me 5 times 7.5% toughness damage reduction per stack, because I will be taking I Shall Not Fall on the left-hand side there. What is that? I have 73.5 toughness damage reduction. You're also going to take Maniac because you aren't run, and that is 30% attack speed. And then there are 2 other things here that I believe are new, and so we're going to look at these. On the Brink, Martyrdom grants 10% corruption resistance per stack. I doubt I'm ever going to take this because honestly, the thing about having a bazillion wounds is it doesn't actually matter very much how much corruption you have because it's really compartmentalized against the wound. The only wound I care about is the second before last one, so I have 1 down, right? Restorative Versus, Martyrdom grants 5% toughness replenishment per stack. That's 25% toughness replenishment. Now, I don't know if this is just coherency replenishment or if it's on kill replenishment. I will need to figure that out, and I don't have the answer for you right now, and I'm sorry. But very interesting. And so you can see why I'm talking about this. You're spending less curios to get the full advantage of it, and there's a bunch of really powerful nodes right above it. So I can see why I would want this now, right? Because remember, you can only get 1 of these ability cooldowns, so it's probably going to be Martyr's Purpose, unless, like, it's going to be whatever your keystone is typically, right? Okay, let's move over to the final one. Inexorable Judgment is still good, by the way. People ask me sometimes if it's still good. It's still totally good. Like, if you want to use it, use it. It's great in Oryx. You can totally use it in Havocs. It's fine. There are advantages to it. Like everything, there's a little bit of push and pull. There is a best, but just because you're not using the best doesn't mean you can't derive advantage from the thing's advantages, right? Well, it's a fast-moving keystone, and it has a lot of nice synergies with the backstabbing playstyle, namely Pious Cutthroat. 100% ability cooldown regeneration for 2 seconds after melee backstab or melee weak spot hit. I mean, melee weak spot hit is on there. You could just poke them in the face. Works great. On the left-hand side of this diamond, we have time to kill. 50% melee backstab damage with 8 seconds cooldown. I'm not sure why the cooldown is so long, but I guess if you're like planning to sneak up on someone while invisible and you haven't killed anyone with a melee backstab recently, you would get 50% damage and potentially pop a boss super hard. So there you have it. Hubris, 15% damage resistance after weak spot kill. So you stab someone in the face, which is all the time in this game, and guess what? 15% damage resistance, not toughness damage resistance for 4 seconds. This is one that would pair very well with the Martyrdom Keystone if you could afford it. Okay, we're gonna go down and then across to the left. So we'll start on the right-hand side. Riposte, plus 4% melee damage after successful dodge, stacking 5 times, last 8 seconds. This is Duelist 2, Electric Boogaloo. Relentless Fervor, 10% sprint speed and minus 10% sprint cost. Sprinting for 1 second grants slow down immunity. This is, okay, listen, if you want to go fast, this is the go fast node. You can also go fast through goo on the ground. You don't get slowed by Beasts of Nurgle anymore. I mean, come on, tell me that's not nice. Behind the lines. Okay, so heavy melee backstab kills suppress enemies within 8 meters with a 5-second cooldown. This is pretty neat. I don't know how it's going to play. I haven't had a chance to try it. But the notion is you come out of stealth, with a melee backstab from a heavy attack like a Thunderhammer or something like that, and you suppress the enemy around you, giving you time to take another action. Suppression doesn't work on every enemy, but it works on a lot of them. So this could be a way to give you really cool things, and we're just going to have to see how it shakes out. All right, let's get into Inexorable. Moving grants you momentum, stacks up to 20 times. When you hit an enemy, spend all momentum, gaining plus 1% melee attack speed, plus 1% ranged attack speed, and plus 1% damage per stack. Lasts 6 seconds. This affects the second hit, not the first hit, which is always the weird thing about Inexorable. So like you're running around and you go to hit someone, well, the melee attack damage, the 20% damage, only takes effect after you deliver the first hit. So if you're using this with stealth, you're actually kind of like anti-synergistic because you're running up to deliver a shot, you're not getting that 20% damage. However, your follow-up attacks are going to be really strong and faster, so maybe that's fine. This is usually why people run Shroudfield and then run Martyrdom, by the way. But hey, there you go. Inebrious Pose, you gain 3 stacks of momentum on successful dodge. Yep, that allows you to continue to refresh Inexorable Judgment and maintain higher uptime. because it does only last 6 seconds. So when it re-triggers, you'll have more if you have an Abrius pose since you're dodging all the time. A Retributor's stance replenishes 0.4% toughness per second per spent stack of momentum during its duration. So you get a bunch of toughness every time you spend Inexorable Judgment momentum stacks. And finally, this is new, Eternal. Increase the duration of Inexorable Judgment to 10 seconds. And this just means that when you actually like do the attack, you gain 4 seconds of that buff instead of 6 seconds. You gain 4 seconds, so you have 10 seconds instead of 6 seconds. That seems pretty good. Unless they've changed this, though, there is still that weird issue where you have to spend the momentum to actually get the bonus, and that interaction... It'd be nice if that interaction could be changed somehow, but I don't know if that can be done technically. Maybe we can get there someday. Okay, so pause for a second. I'm going to talk to you about the position of this class in the game a little bit. My opinion on Zealot is that it is a bit stronger than it was, but not radically stronger than it was. Maybe I'm wrong. I've been playing the class in Orc games. And again, I said this in my vet video, and it's obvious that there's buffs in the trees. It's obvious that the trees give you access to more talents more easily. This is not an easy thing to assess. I'm not able to like go to the range and test everything out, but my opinion on the class from the tree is that it still feels very similar to how it feels now, with just more flexibility and a few unique bells and whistles. So I do notice moments where I'm tougher because I have more access to toughness talents that I did before, but I'll remind you that, and maybe you don't pay attention to me because I'm just some guy on the internet, but like for a long time I was streaming Zealot and I was playing around with this idea of like, what if I could just take all the toughness nodes? And I took Martyrdom and my damage didn't go down very much, but my toughness survivability went up a lot. And like I lost some utilities there, so I had to play extra like weird. But I did that, and it doesn't feel too different from that to me. Like, I feel a little tankier. Given the right circumstances, I'm tankier. I'm definitely doing a lot of damage. I still feel really strong, but I feel very much like Zealot feels already. And there are changes to enemies, and there are new enemies on the table, and that I think because of those, even though there's definitely some like potential numerical differences here, I'm not actually feeling like I'm radically more powerful. Now, look. I'm not trying to make a prediction at all. I'm just trying to give you a sense. And the reason I'm trying to give you a sense is because, like, look, I was wrong about Arbides entirely. But I used a different methodology for assessing I actually used a more rigorous methodology in this one. This is just my vibe check. I don't have a way to easily do anything rigorous because rigor would require comparison points, and I don't have anything I can compare to because enemies have been changed. Everything's been adjusted. So my vibe check on this is, in the new landscape, I feel similar, but good. Really good. Maybe we're going to find something that's super busted. We'll all find that together, because I certainly haven't found it. I certainly don't know, and I haven't spent enough time with this tree to really say one way or another. All I can give you is my instinctual vibe check from playing. So I guess join me on the 23rd, and we'll try to figure it out together. Maybe you guys have... By the time this video has been out for 2 days, you guys, or a day or whatever, you guys have theory crafted something that I never saw. Totally possible. You know, I haven't spent that much time with this tree, so I don't really know what's good or not. I just have been trying to feel it out, try different things, experiment, see what could be done. I probably am wrong. There's a pretty good chance that I'm wrong about whatever I think is going to be a good build. Because, and I'll just remind you guys, it took us a really long time to figure out what was good on Zealot. Most people were running weird builds for a very long time. I think we're faster at it now, but I think the changes are significant. So, as generally a Zealot player myself, I have to say that the changes feel pretty, like, it still feels like I can kind of build all the builds I want to build. Anything I want to play that's familiar to play is still there. The play style is still there, but there's a lot here to unpack and figure out. So, if I'm being pedantic, I apologize, but I'm looking forward to playing with you on the 23rd. Warm regards, everybody. Reginald. I would like to take a moment to provide a special thank you to a Rando Dude and Joseph Davison for being Oathmaker level members, and to Zimisk3 and Fluff. Also, a shout out to Vinny for continuing to support my channel whenever I do have time to stream. Hopefully that will pick up again soon. Guys, genuinely, I really appreciate it a lot. It honestly is just so encouraging to have you guys supporting me like that, and it means a lot to me personally. So thank you. I hope to continue to bring you high quality content. I continue to do my best. So take care, and I'll see you around. Thanks so much for visiting, and bye-bye.